what's up guys, welcome back to the channel, and on today's video I have a good one for you, as I often say, but I really mean it this time, as I do in most cases, but especially so this time. Anyway, in today's video we are looking at the latest update to the Frequenza from DIADORA. This is the Frequenza 2. And guys, if you remember my original video of the Frequenza, you know that it was a great shoe. I absolutely loved it, but there was a couple issues with it that I just didn't get along with. And I'm happy to say that even though the updates of the Frequenza 2 are quite small, the updates have made this a totally doable shoe for me now. Let's get into it. Before we get started, I do just want to say that DIADORA was good enough to send me this pair of the Frequenza 2 for the purpose of review. However, they haven't told me what to say. They don't have any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, you're going to be able to pick up a pair of the DIADORA Frequenza 2 for $180. And of course, I'll place a link in the show notes below in case you want to pick up a pair for yourself. Guys, you know what? I think I can say that you have too many running shoes when you're thinking of a shoe that you want and you look back and you can't find it. That's amazing. I'm looking for the Gara Carbon 2 and I'm just not seeing it. Oh, I see it now. Okay, the first thing that I love about the Frequenza 2 is that it looks remarkably similar, especially in this colorway, to the Gara Carbon 2. And basically, the Frequenza is an up-tempo daily trainer. I mean, it's made for those faster efforts. On DIADORA's website, they do say that it's made for quick workouts and tempo runs. And then we've got, like, the big sister. This is the Gara Carbon 2. This is DIADORA's top-of-the-line race day shoe, very fast. So ideally, when you're training, you're going to be training in the Frequenza 2, at least for those faster miles. And then on race day, you're going to strap on a pair of the Gara Carbon 2, take care of business. Anyway, I'm really glad I found that. But moving on, the DIADORA Frequenza 2 has 36 in the heel, 28 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. Now that's an additional 1mm of stack height over the original Frequenza. Now DIADORA claims that in a US men's size 10, and by the way on their site they list a UK men's size 9, which is a US men's size 10, but in a UK men's size 9, US men's size 8, the Frequenza 2 would tip the scale at 8.1 ounces or 230 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, it'll tip the scale at 10.2 ounces or 289 grams. So it's pretty light. And typically anything for me that's under 300 grams, I somewhat consider a light shoe. So this is well under at 289 grams. But of course, this shoe doesn't exist in a vacuum. And if you are thinking of picking up a pair of the DIADORA Frequenza 2, you may be considering some of the competition. So for the competition that I have on hand and that I chose to compare against the DIADORA Frequenza 2, I've chosen to compare them for different reasons. First off, I want to compare it to the Mizuno Neo Zen. Now the Mizuno Neo Zen will cost $150. It has a little more stack with 40 in the heel, 34 in the forefoot, and in my size weighs in at 293 grams. So it's just 4 grams heavier than my size in the Frequenza 2. Now I think this is a good comparable because of the underfoot feel. I think both the Neo Zen and the Frequenza 2 offer a very responsive ride. Like if I was going for a race, I would probably opt for the Frequenza 2 just because it does feel a little snappier. But remember, it's $30 more than the Neo Zen, and the Neo Zen has a little more stack height and is going to be a little more forgiving in the long run. Next up, I think we have to compare the Frequenza 2 to the Topo Spectre 2. Now the Spectre 2 will cost $165, so it's only $15 less than the Frequenza 2. The Spectre 2 has a 37-32 stack, and in my size weighs in at 285 grams. So it weighs 4 grams less than my size in the Frequenza 2. Now I think this is probably the best comparable that I have, because the Spectre 2 is, like the Frequenza 2, a non-plated, kind of premium up-tempo shoe. Now the Spectre 2 does have 100% Pebax midsole, so if you really like Pebax, you may be considering the Spectre 2, but as far as performance goes, I think these two really go head-to-head nicely. Next up, I think we have to compare the Frequenza 2 to the Adidas Evo SL. Now, of course, the Adidas Evo SL has been a wildly popular shoe. It costs $150. We have 38.5 in the heel, 32 in the forefoot, and in my size, the Evo SL weighs in at 283 grams. So it weighs 6 grams less than the Frequenza 2. But still, if we are comparing speed, like if I was going to take this out for short intervals or even a tempo run, I think these two go head-to-head very well. And as far as looks goes, I think the Evo SL is one of the sharpest shoes out there. But I've got to say that everything that DIADORA puts out looks incredibly sharp. So it definitely goes well together in the looks department. Next up, if you're looking for something that probably has the same use case scenario as the Frequenza 2, but is a little cheaper, you might be considering the Hoka Mark 6. Now the Hoka Mark 6 will only cost $140. So it's $40 less than the Frequenza 2, but there is quite a big difference in quality between these two shoes. Just looking at the workmanship that goes into the Frequenza 2, it just seems like a higher quality product than the Mark 6. With that said, they're both made for the same type of runs. They are made for picking up the pace. They both can be used as a non-plated race day shoe. Now, if I had the choice between these two for a race or even a tempo run, I would definitely be reaching for the Frequenza 2. but that's personal preference. I just like how the midsole feels in the Frequenza 2 a little more than I do in the Mach 6. But there is no getting away from the similarities between these two shoes. So I almost feel bad comparing a $140 shoe to a $180 shoe, but there it is. But again, that comparison kind of ends at the performance side of things. And because DIADORA has made some changes to this upper, I think the Frequenza 2 is going to fit a wider range of feet than the Mach 6. The Mach 6 is quite narrow. Now, the original Frequenza was also quite narrow, especially up here in the toe box. And the Frequenza 2 is mainly an upper update this year, even though, as I said, we do have an additional 1mm of stack height in the midsole. The midsole compound is still the same, and the shoe rides very similar to the original. But DIADORA has increased the width of this toe box, which to me made all the difference in the world, but we'll get to that in the ride section. So let's start at the top and work our way down, and I'm going to hold that up, and this shoe has a good amount of padding around the heel collar. I want to say a good amount. It has a good amount for a speed day shoe. When you put your foot into the Frequenza 2, it just feels soft. It almost feels like a daily trainer. And remember that, because we're going to come back to that thought in just a second. But plenty of padding around this heel collar. The heel counter is super rigid. If you are someone that suffers from a little heel slip, this rigid heel counter is really going to benefit you. I didn't experience any heel slip at all. Now, the tongue on the Frequenza 2, I absolutely love. And I wish more brands would go this direction, but it's a super thin, it's almost a race day tongue, but it's a microfiber material, not just one piece of microfiber, because that may not be enough to protect from any lace bite, but we've obviously got a couple layers of microfiber here on the tongue, and it does provide enough cushioning where I didn't get any lace bite. Tongue is gusseted on both sides, and we do have a double lace loop here on the front. Now, the lace loop is parallel, which I think is just a styling issue. I don't see how parallel lace loops do much more than a single lace loop on the front, but I'm certainly not going to question DIADORA on their style choices. Clearly, they know what they're doing. I don't know if you can see it from here, but the DIADORA Frequenza 2, like the Frequenza, is featuring these serrated locking laces, which I absolutely love. I don't know if these laces are actually more expensive than laces that are not serrated, but either way, I wish more brands would go to serrated laces. Just removes any stress of your laces coming untied while you're out on the run. I am definitely here for it. Now, as far as the upper goes, DIADORA is using a thin nylon air mesh upper. There are some microfiber accents, although not as many microfiber accents as on the original Frequenza. Like on the original Frequenza, did I even bring it with me to talk about? Yeah, here it is. So on the original Frequenza, you can see we've got some microfiber right around the toe. We have done away with that on the Frequenza 2. There's a lot more microfiber coming along the eyelet chain here on the original Frequenza. And it seems like DIADORA has gone with a more, I don't know, vinyl, plastic reinforcement along the eyelet chain. And there just seems to be fewer overlays, or at least lighter overlays than on the original Frequenza. Let's just go back to the tongue for a second, because we can see, I don't know how well you can see. I'm gonna have to overlay something, but we've got some holes right here on the tongue. In fact, we've got 2 holes, and these are probably just ventilation holes, which is totally fine. But on the original Frequenza, let me hold this up, we have a very lightweight mesh material right here. And on the Frequenza 2, we've got a thicker microfiber material that comes all the way down for the entire tongue. So where the original Frequenza had a breathable mesh part of the tongue right here, the Frequenza 2 has gone for a thicker microfiber material and just put some ventilation holes right in the center. Just looking at it, it looks like this part of the tongue may be a little warmer in warmer climates than the original Frequenza. But honestly, if I'm looking for stuff to complain about, I think I'm grasping at straws with this little like 1 square inch area not being as breathable on the 2 as it was on the original, and I think these holes are going to do just fine. I think maybe DIADORA switched out for that microfiber tongue because some people may have had a little lace bite further down their foot. I don't know. It didn't happen to me. Now, of course, between the uppers of the Frequenza 2 and the original Frequenza, we are still using that air mesh upper. Very light, very breathable. It's just like a different pattern on the 2 than it was on the original. But if I hold it up, probably difficult to see. But the toe box of the Frequenza 2 is just slightly wider. And on the original Frequenza, I did find that my little toe was kind of pressing against the side. And so when I was running in this shoe for a long time, I did start to feel the pressure. I didn't notice it on my shorter runs, but after I was running in it for, I don't know, an hour and a half, I did start to notice, and it was enough where it was bothering me. Now, it seems like that has been totally fixed with the Frequenza 2 by just slightly widening the toe box or making that taper into the toe box just a little later, so my feet fit in it a little better. Now, I don't think the Frequenza 2, at least the regular sizing, is a wide fit. I think those of you with wide feet may need to go for the wide version, but the Frequenza 2 definitely fits me better. And I'm here for it because the ride is so sweet in the Frequenza that I often want to run longer, and now I can with the Frequenza 2. So I know a lot of you like to save a little bit of money and buy last year's model, and honestly, if you have very narrow feet, I'd probably say go with the original Frequenza. But if you need a little bit of room, or if you have already run into Frequenza and you ran into the same issue with me, with just a little bit of tightness around your little toe, DIADORA did well in the Frequenza 2 by making it just a bit bigger. Now if we come down to the midsole, DIADORA is using their Anima N2 midsole foam. This is a supercritical EVA. It is very soft and very responsive. Now a lot of brands are going for a supercritical EVA in their up-tempo shoes, but all supercritical EVAs, as you know, are not created equal. The Anima N2 midsole foam is definitely one of the softer and more responsive feeling foams that I've run in. So if you do like a slightly softer and responsive foam, this is definitely one to take a look at. If we move on down to the outsole, we can see we've got the blue and orange. I said it in my unboxing, but if you are a Florida Gators fan, the Frequenza 2 in this colorway is probably worth picking up just for that reason, with the orange and the blue. Now, DIADORA is using their Duratec 5000 outsole rubber. They have a softer compound up here on the front, a little firmer here on the back. And if I look at the wear, I'm seeing a little bit of wear up here on my forefoot, which I suppose isn't surprising if they're using a softer compound. And then back here on the heel, we've got a good amount of outsole rubber coverage. I'm noticing like a little bit of wear on the tread, like the pattern has been worn away, but there is still plenty of outsole rubber here on my rear lateral heel, which is where I often see the most amount of wear. I'm seeing a little bit of wear on the midsole foam, but really that's just my sloppy running. So as far as ride goes, now first of all, if you have been watching many of my reviews, you know that I tend to prefer a softer ride, so I am definitely loving the Frequenza 2 and the soft ride from the Anima N2 midsole foam. However, for some people that do like a firmer foam, the Frequenza 2 may not be for you. Now, like a lot of supercritical EVAs, it can often feel very soft in the beginning, so when you're running slow, the foam feels a lot softer than it does when you pick up the pace. And then when you start to like turn over, the foam firms up just a little bit. And that's exactly what happens with the Frequenza 2, which makes it a very well-rounded shoe. Now, I often say something like, when I'm talking about daily trainers, I'll often say something like, yeah, the shoe feels good at slower paces and it can pick up the pace okay. And it feels like I say the same thing very often because a lot of shoes can be described that way, but there is a little bit of nuance because some obviously do it better than others, right? It's a fairly generic thing to say that a shoe feels good when running easy, but it also feels good when you run fast. So my point with that preface is that that's exactly how I feel about the Frequenza 2. Yes, this shoe is made to run fast. I think it feels good when you pick up the pace. I would definitely want to take it out for a tempo run, especially because the shoe is going to make you do a little bit more work because it doesn't have a plate. And then when it comes time to race day, you're going to strap on those Gara Carbon 2s and just floor it to the finish line. But what I love, because of the soft midsole foam, is how this shoe performs at easy paces. I guess by today's standards, with a 36-28 stack, we're probably looking at a mid-stack shoe. But guys, 36 and 28 is still a lot of stack underfoot, and I never felt like my foot was bottoming out, and overall it gave me a very comfortable ride. So look, I know it's $180, and I know that the shoes that I've been comparing it to are mostly cheaper. No, in fact, all of the comparables were cheaper than the Frequenza 2. But like if we're comparing it to the Topo Spectre 2, it's only $15 more expensive, and we do have a very solid shoe that looks absolutely phenomenal. Would I like to see the shoe just a little cheaper? Yeah, I think maybe that a lower price, just a slightly lower price, would let them compete against the competition a little better, but I don't think that DIADORA's quality can be overstated. This is a very well-made shoe, especially when you compare it to some of the competition. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Okay, first of all, I want to know, have you run in any DIADORA shoes? Second, are you thinking of picking up a pair of the Frequenza 2? Drop a comment and let me know. But for now, it's Matt B. This has been my review of DIADORA's Frequenza 2. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.